Hello everyone, and welcome to This Nintendo Life, episode 256! My name is NBZ, and it's officially happened. I am German now. I got the new passport, and it's nice. Eat sausages for breakfast every day, and have a bit of pork knuckle on the side. It's a pretty good life.
You didn't have a European breakfast?
No, well, here's the thing. Actually, the hotel that we stayed at, I was expecting full continental, right? Because that's all you get over there, which is like, here's just some fucking croissants and some hams, right? Like, that's basically what they do.
A bit of cheese, a bit of ham.
Yeah.
And No eggs, no bacon, no. You know, all the full thing. It's just, and it's cold.
It's cold, yeah. But here's the kicker, Bally. They had sausages and scrambled egg. And I was like, well, you know,
they knew the Americans were in town.
They did. They knew all these international people were over. They're like, we've got to cater to them somehow. Let's give them some sausage and some egg. So yeah, there was a bit of that. To be fair, though, we didn't really have breakfast at the hotel that often because it was 18 euros for breakfast every day. So we're like, well, let's maybe just go around the corner and buy like a sandwich or like a croissant from there instead.
Okay.
So did breakfast a couple of times, but not too often, basically. But yeah, I did. There are a couple of nights there where we were up until 1 a.m. and then I woke up at 6:45 a.m. having done a full 12-hour day on my feet at Gamescom, and those were the days. Yeah, and those were the days where I really did need the sausage and egg in the morning just to shove down my throat, just to get me through. So, yeah, you don't get a lot of time to eat. Mostly they just gave us vegan hot dogs, which turns out actually quite good. Shout out to vegan hot dogs, like them. But yes.
Where did you get the vegan hot dog, sorry?
At the Indie Arena booth where we were, there were volunteers there, and basically we were too busy to go and have lunch, so they would come and bring us vegan hot dogs basically for lunch. So nice. Yeah. Obviously you have to eat it while still talking to the crowds of people and everyone coming by, but yeah, no, it was good fun. And for more like this, you can subscribe to patreon.com/ThisNintendoLife, where I will have my audio log. I still haven't finished putting that thing together, but
I'm very excited for this audio log.
Yeah, I think maybe by the time this goes up, I probably will have it up there. Hopefully this weekend I'm going to edit that together and put it up.
If you're from LA, will you be able to listen to it without falling out with TNL?
Yes,
okay,
I think
good.
so. Yeah,
okay,
yeah. Do you mean Germany?
No, I just meant like the last audio log you did. I feel like there was a lot of shade thrown at LA. And I'm hoping that there'll be slightly less shade thrown at Cologne this time. We'll see.
See, here's the thing. I feel like people who live in LA also talk shit about LA. So, like, you know, we're all on the same side, really. So yeah, but yeah, I did come back with an illness. There's a whole fucking saga. Like, we got blocked. There was a whole thing with the UK with flights being cancelled, and so we were literally on our way to the airport and our flights got cancelled, and so we spent an extra day in Europe traveling to Brussels, Bally's old haunt,
which is exactly the route we did way back in 2016 when you came to Brussels and stayed with me, and then we went to Cologne. Yeah, it
was so funny because I was telling my colleague Liz, I was like, hey, look at this train, because we were on our way to the airport. I was like, oh, me and my friend got that train back in 2016. Little did we know that we'd be taking the same train a day later to try and catch the Eurostar. So yeah, it was it was one of the most tiring but rewarding, like, most memorable weeks of my life. So I think it's worth getting on Patreon and listening to that audio log when it goes live. There's ups and downs and plenty of stories.
Do you want to quickly plug the games that you promoted that are coming?
Oh, sure, yeah. So we have Axolotl, which is coming out actually this week when this episode goes live. It comes out Thursday, the 14th of September. So go and check that out.
Roguelike top-down shooter?
Yeah, roguelike shooter. Also, it's kind of like part pet management where you can take these little baby axolotls that you find in your runs and you can raise them. You can give them food and stuff and give them abilities. It's a lot of fun. It was one of the most popular indie games at Gamescom. That's not me being, arrogant. That's the truth. Like, we literally the queue never stopped. The line never ended. It was insane.
That is really impressive. That is awesome.
So people were loving the game there, which is great. And it's out on Switch as well. So hey, it's a game that I'm been working on that's coming out Switch day one. I'll see if I can grab some codes and we'll see if we can do a little giveaway on the podcast. That'll be a nice thing to do next time. So yeah, that's coming out. And also The Last Faith, which is a gothic Metroidvania, very, very Castlevania in style, very, very cool, and that's slated for November. So yeah, people could play both of those there at our booth, which was a good time.
And you did a little stream, didn't you?
I did, yes.
You were invited on to talk about Last Faith, and I was very impressed. Really, really good skills there with the whole streaming, playing at the same time. I was very proud,
they said my years of just being a YouTube degenerate would pay off with nothing, but I proved them wrong, didn't I? No, I was on the Indie Arena booth stream, so the Indie Arena booth hosts their own stream throughout Gamescom, and it gets promoted on Twitch and stuff, so there was like, I don't know, 4,000 or 5,000 people or technically watching. I think those numbers are a little bit cooked because they're basically like front page numbers, but no one's really watching, so like the chat is a bit slower than that and stuff like that, but if you want to go and check that out, then you can find it in the Indie Arena booth Twitch channel. It should be archived there. Nice. So yeah, you can watch me do a bit of a walkthrough of our beta build for The Last Faith. So yeah, go check that stuff out. But Bally, we're here to talk about the video games, what we've been playing, what's been going on, and I guess I'll kick it off with Gamescom stuff.
You managed to put on your TNL hat just for a quick bit to have a wander around.
Yeah, so Bally, you'll remember back when we did Gamescom in 2016, there's this fun little hour in the morning where the press get in early. Basically before the rabble, there's a little bit of a window where you can be like, flash your badge and be like, haha, I am a media person. I was a tier above that because I was an exhibitor, which means I get in even earlier. So we got in like 8 a.m. sometimes. And a couple of times we did this. First time we did it was just kind of wandering around. We got me and my colleagues got a nice picture at the Mario pipe in the Nintendo area, which was a thing that had like a massive line later in the day, but literally no one was there. So one of the Nintendo employees was taking photos of, I think someone. It was like I think it was a bunch of people from like Hoyoverse were taking pictures there, and the Nintendo person was taking a picture of them.
It was like the Mario Wonder style.
Yeah, it was like a warp pipe. It was just kind of a generic Mario pipe, I guess. Because Wonder wasn't announced then, was it? No, it was. I don't know.
Yeah,
but they didn't.
I feel like they
there.
saved all their three-dimensional plastic for PAX West.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So yeah, we got a nice picture there, and we played some Tekken, which was cool. Tekken 8, which is looking really good. But my main goal, Bally, was to play the one interesting thing in Nintendo's booth. Now, Nintendo's booth had Pikmin 4 and Tears of the Kingdom. Of course, the most up-to-date games that you can't play anywhere else. So
can't wait for those two games to come out.
Yeah, it'd be really good if Nintendo just dropped those at some point. You know, been waiting a long time. I find it so weird. I don't know how you feel about this, but like people who go to conventions and play video games that are already out. I don't know. Like, I feel there's a lot of people out there probably who just don't own a Switch, or like I think Gamescom attracts a very casual audience in a lot of ways. Like, there's 300,000 people.
Yeah, so. I think it's the joy of let's go out with my gamer crew and let's just have a good time together. And we might play some new games. We might play some games we've already own or have played before, and let's just have a good time on the day, I guess is the only way I can kind of describe it. Because yeah, back in 2016 when we went, we were like, why would anyone queue 4 hours to play FIFA or
Overwatch was there? There was so much Overwatch stuff. And
yeah,
it was
Overwatch,
like, well, you can do this at home right now.
Yeah, exactly. So we were like on a mission to try and play like VR stuff and new stuff, and yeah, totally. But it didn't stop Nintendo's line for Pikmin and Tears of the Kingdom being like 200 people long, right? Yeah, but the thing that they did have was actually some new games that we're interested in, namely the brand new 2D Prince of Persia. I believe it's called The Lost Crown. And I spotted it early, and I was like, my mission, if I do nothing else, is to play that demo. That's the one thing I want to play here. And I managed to do that. So on the morning, I think, of Saturday, we got on super early. And I decided, here we go, we're going to do Prince of Persia. And I got there to the Nintendo booth, and nothing was set up. It was too early, and the guy basically ushered me out and was like, you're not allowed in here. So he kicked me out. He actually kicked me out for me to then end up going to Sega instead. So, they caused a rift there. I became a... Don't they know what they're doing?
Became a Nintendo person for a little brief window, because Sega had Persona 5 Tactica as well as Persona 3 remake, but also Sonic Superstars. So I was like, well, they'll probably let me play something because they're more chill than Nintendo, and surprise, they were. So I played Sonic Superstars, which very briefly I'll say is fine. Like, I think it's actually kind of bad because it frankly feels like an old school Sonic game in the way it controls, right? I think one of the good things about Mania is that Mania felt modern in its feel.
But looked old.
It looked old, but it felt like a more modern Sonic game. It played more like the GBA games or like more modern 2D Sonic games. Right. It had a fluidity and a flow to it that I really enjoyed and thought was snappy and fun.
Whereas if you do the like New Super Mario Brothers comparison, I'd argue New Super Mario Brothers controls quite differently to, say, Mario World, right? Like, I feel like the physics had been updated considerably.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think like modern in a way that is quite good. I think the New Super Mario Brothers games feel pretty good, right?
Yeah,
generally. Sonic Superstars really feels like a step backwards because I picked up the controller and, you know, maybe this is lag and stuff like that, but it really felt sluggish and unwieldy and slow, and like turning around was not easy, and it just felt like an old school Sonic game in its feel, and that is just not what I'm looking for these days, right? If I want a Sonic game, I want it to feel a bit more modern, and Sonic's all about speed and like mobility and movement, and it just wasn't doing that. I think part of it is the characters are very chunky. They have that kind of blocky feel. Like, I feel like a lot of Sega games, a lot of games of the Genesis era are defined by a more brick-like style in terms of the character design and the chunkiness of the pixels and all that sort of stuff. And that felt full force here in this demo. So it was the first kind of 2 levels, you know, Green Hill Zone. The difference here is that you get this power-up that basically lets you do different things. So the one that they showed off, and they've showed off already, is the waterfall power, where you basically, if you turn on this water power, then you can climb up waterfalls in the background. So it adds like a nice verticality, a nice kind of like background 2.5D layer to the space where, you know, Sonic's always been about speed, but it has also always been about alternate paths, right? Like, you think about those first levels and how many different layers there are. It's like 3 different planes of action, essentially, in Sonic levels. And this feels like it's leaning a lot more into that and that exploration focus. And I think because it controls a bit more clunkily, they're kind of leaning a bit more into the way that you do exploration in a Sonic game. And like, I found one of the kind of mini game things to get the Chaos Emerald, and this one was like a kind of 3D thing where you're swinging like grappling hooks onto different points, and then you eventually find like the thing in the middle. So it's varying up a good amount. The boss was a basic Eggman boss where he chases you, you hit him. Very similar to, you know, a lot of those starting bosses in Sonic games.
But you don't think it's going to make big waves?
I feel like the Sonic people will love it, but the Sonic people love literally fucking anything, so, like, they're very easily pleased, let's say.
They're bruised souls by this point.
Yeah. Yeah, and, you know, maybe it is that the environment in terms of, like, controller and stuff just wasn't there and laggy and stuff like that, but yeah, it just didn't feel good to me. It just didn't feel fun to control, and I really like the aesthetic they have, but I think everything else feels a little stuck in the past with this one. So, yeah, it does look very pretty. I think they were running it on PlayStations, I want to say. I think I played it with a DualSense, so, but it's coming to Switch, so, you know, mileage will vary, I'm sure, when it comes to Sonic. And if you're a Sonic fan, then ignore everything I've said, because you'll buy it anyway, so I'm sure you'll have a good time. But yeah, the main thing that I want to talk about, Prince of Persia, which talk about the opposite experience to Sonic. Like, this game controls like a fucking dream. Holy shit. So I think we're very interested by this because of the positive word of mouth from people who played it at Summer Game Fest. You know, I was interested after Ubisoft revealed it at Jeff's show, and I was like, oh great, a Metroidvania Prince of Persia. Like, this seems really cool. It has like a Metroid Dread almost style to it with 2.5D aesthetic. But I was like, well, but how's it going to play? How's it going to feel? And it turns out it's like perfect. If you think about the things that I care about in games, this is like every single one of them, which is like, okay, it's 2D, it feels fast and fluid, every movement is like precise and agile. There's platforming in there, interesting like kind of temples and Metroidvania level design. Like, it's
just... What was the level design? Did it feel quite Metroid Dread, or was it a bit more obvious or less linear? Because there are aspects... Dread is, in my view, expertly crafted in the sense that it's fairly linear for the most part, but that it's still... You're still working out just enough of where to go next. That it's a great balance of linear but not overly linear.
Yes, I would say that this feels more open than Dread in a few different ways. Like, the thing with the demo was... It felt like it wasn't built for a show in that it had a timer on it as opposed to anything else. So like the space I could explore was pretty massive, and I'm like, man, this is a long demo, but then like 20 minutes hit and it's like, thanks for playing, basically, is what happens. So it basically does a timed thing which makes sense for these booths. You want people to move through, and once the timer is over, then you can easily get a rotation of a certain number of people per hour, that type of thing, which is smart practice for an event. But because it was a timer thing, it meant I could really go in any direction I wanted, and the map felt pretty large, and I had a lot of options of where to go and what to do. It has the kind of checkpoints of, save areas and things like that, but it was really cool because there's this it's almost like time is a big thing with Prince of Persia, right? And rewinding and Sands of Time and that sort of stuff. There is a mechanic that does that where you activate a trigger, it's like a crystal thing, and the level starts to kind of morph and warp about, and it opens up a new pathway, and it kind of like has things crash to the ground and build back up, but it creates platforming challenges around those in a timed fashion, which is really nice. And there was a lot of chaining together wall jumps into air dashes into spikes on walls, but you're wall jumping between them. Like there's a section like where you drop down and you're doing almost an Indiana Jones temple style thing where there are two swinging things, but there's platforms in the middle and you have to jump over, dash underneath another one. Like really satisfying, good platforming design, which I think is what is elevating this a little bit more for me, because, I love a good Metroidvania, but the ones I gravitate towards, and we gravitate towards, I think, are the Ori games, which are so platforming focused. Yeah. And if you're going to really take my heart, you're going to do stuff like that, and that feels the direction this is going in.
That's really cool.
The combat is really good as well. Like it feels snappy, satisfying. You can attack from every angle. So like if you're in the air and you do a down strike, it will have an animation for that.
Have you just got your swishy sword? Is that all you had in the demo? Or?
So that's the main weapon. You also get your bow and arrow, and the bow and arrow is set to the other attack button. So your main attack is your sword. The other one is your bow, but the bow is a limited number of arrows. So you can use it from far away, but you'll run out of arrows, and you can get more by defeating enemies or from item chests and stuff like that. So you'll pick up more arrows, but it's a limited resource. But a lot of it is enemies that are blocking you with shields, and you're having to be like, okay, I have to jump over them to the other side to hit them from behind type of thing. There'll be enemies that do the thing where, they'll do an unblockable attack, so they'll shine red, so you can't parry. There's a parry as well, right? So there's your basic straightforward attacks, combos, but then you can throw a parry in there to break an enemy guard and then do a bunch of damage to them. Very, very satisfying stuff. And yeah, they mix it up with some tougher enemies quite early on, actually. And I thought, this is a good kind of level of challenge. Like, I died a couple of times. I definitely got lost a little bit, which is kind of what you want a little bit in Metroidvanias, but still felt like I knew where I was going and where to progress. Some really nice shortcuts being opened up. Just like the fundamental fluidity, like there's a button you hold to run in the game as well, so you can hold it down to run faster, and there's just a real momentum to running, sliding under a thing, jumping over it, doing a wall jump, chaining into a combo, then starting to fight aerial enemies. Like there's a motion to it, fluidity that I thought was fantastic.
Is the animation there? Because that's one aspect of Metroid Dread that was really like, there were some YouTube channels and things really breaking down and analyzing some of the incredible animation of Samus and just the way that she jumps and, as you say, like slides into a jump and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I would say it's not up to par with that, unfortunately, and I don't think many things can be, just because of the time and dedication that Nintendo has to do this stuff. But it all looks really good. I will say, so it was on Switch. I was playing the Switch version, and it was running really smoothly. I would say that it was dipping here and there, but like it was mainly at 60, but then it was kind of jumping a little bit lower depending on the place you were at. But it didn't feel bad. Like it felt actually like they were using a bit of dynamic resolution, so it may have been that I was experiencing, where you can definitely tell from a resolution standpoint it's not the best place to play it, but I was playing on the TV, not handheld, so I imagine if I kind of do want to play this on Switch because it runs really well, and I'll mainly be playing it handheld, and I can imagine the OLED, this thing's going to look really nice. So I actually was kind of sold on the Switch version. It's like one of the best third-party Switch games I've seen in a while, if I'm honest, in terms of like fluidity and motion and all that sort of stuff. So frame rate is good, and resolution, I'd say resolution is not great, but that's because the TV is a much higher resolution TV that they were showing on, that sort of stuff. So yeah, I'm very excited. This thing's coming out start of next year, so it's like very early 2024 game. But it's immediately shot up to like my most anticipated list. There's so much of me in this game, of the things that I like, and I'm like, I just have to play this thing. It's definitely calling out to me. So very excited, and hopefully they put like a demo out or something, because I think it would really sell a lot of people on it who haven't been already, because it has a lot of...
It'd be nice for Ubisoft to have a hit on Switch, because I think
it would be.
The last Mario plus Rabbids didn't do the best.
No, it didn't. It did not. And, you know, I don't know, this... I feel like people have not an issue, but I think it's harder to sell people on a $50 game that's 2D. Yeah. And I get why that's the case, because of the rise of the indie market and how many high quality, like Hollow Knight is like 12 quid for God's sake, right?
Yeah.
And it's tough. But I think that, you know, a high quality game like this is worth shelling out for. So,
totally.
Yeah, very much hope that it does well. Hope that it turns out well as well. So, we shall see. But last little quick thing, I also got to, because after I finished Prince of Persia, there was a Star Ocean stand next by, because they also had Star Ocean Second Story R, the remake of Star Ocean 2, available. So I was like, oh, I'll just check this out and see what it's like. And I didn't realize Star Ocean is not turn-based at all. I had no idea that Star Ocean is actually action-based combat. And so you have this thing where, you know, it's kind of mimicking Octopath Traveler, but it's very different in the sense that the backgrounds are very much like 3D rendered environments. Like, you know how Octopath does kind of a blend of that, where some of the backgrounds are 3D, but a lot of it is still pixel art in terms of the houses and stuff like that.
A cliff might be 3D, but then you're right, the house is pixel art.
Exactly. Whereas this is just everything else is 3D, only the characters are pixel art. And the pixel art characters have a bit more... a depth to them, I would say. Like, they feel a little more 3D in the way that they're modeled, and there's a lot more kind of like wide angles, bigger kind of spaces. Like, there's a whole giant desert that I got to that I was wandering around, so it kind of drops you into like a save file 30 hours into the game, so it doesn't do a good onboarding process. It's very hard to demo RPGs at events like this, so I totally appreciate it. But yeah, it was hard for me to get my head around it. It felt like, I don't know, the combat was... It felt like Tales in some sense, like the Tales of games, where those are action combat, but they're also kind of RPGs. And I thought it was interesting, but I didn't really understand what was going on. I was just pressing buttons and things were happening, and I guess I won, but I didn't really know why or how. So it feels like the sort of thing where if I was to get into it, it would have to be like, yes, let's do the whole tutorial, get into the combat, understand how it really works. But you can switch between characters, you can jump between them at will, and you can do special moves, and I think you can give other ones orders to do moves while you're not in direct control of them. A lot of that stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I couldn't really get a good read on it, a good impression of it, because it's a hard thing to jump into. But it looked pretty, is what I can say. So people are excited to revisit that game or to play it for the first time. Seems like it's going to turn out decently. So there you go. Those were my Gamescom games for 2024. So happy I was able to play some stuff, at the very least, among the busyness of everything else. But, Bally, I also played some other stuff, both before and after Gamescom. And one of the games that I played is a game that we talk about backlogs a lot, right? And, you know, eventually I'll get around to this, I'll get around to that. This is a game that's been on my backlog for, 5-6 years. I watched a quick look for it, I think in like 2017, something like that. It's a little game called Later Alligator. And I remember watching this. I think Vinny was driving the quick look, and he was very into it, the kind of charm of it, the style of it. It's basically what if a point and click adventure game met WarioWare is kind of the pitch on this thing. So the idea is that you're this kind of detective guy, and you see things in first person, and you're point and clicking around the environment, and you're meeting up with this little alligator kid, and this entire city is like a I don't know, an American city in the 80s or something. I don't know what the actual era of time is, but it kind of has that kind of classic-y old school vibe to it. And you've been hired.
It's old school now.
It is. Well, it's more than 40 years ago, mate, so we're getting there. It's ancient history. And and you meet this kid who's in a bar, and he's like, oh no, something bad's going to happen, so I've hired you to figure out what's going on, because people are keeping secrets from him and he doesn't know what's going on. So you are this detective, and you go around the city and you talk to family members, other people in the community. Everyone's an alligator basically, and it's this whole city of alligators, and you talk to them and they pop up little mini games, and so the first one is this guy who's like, I'm gonna do the 3 cups thing, and he like has he obviously puts like something under a cup and then slowly moves around the 2 next to it, and it's like, well, obviously it's the one in the middle, but then you click on it and like the cup moves on its own, and you're like, you click on it again and like it moves on its own again, and it's like it's like adds a bit of comedy to the idea of the minigame, so like you never really get what you expect essentially, and so it kind of adds the minigames are more a means to an end for some storytelling stuff, as opposed to like actually things that you want to be good at or like have a lot of challenge associated with them. There are some trickier ones later on. There's one early that's like a crane machine, and you have to get the exact thing that the girl wants from the crane machine, and if you know how crane machines work, they're a fucking pain in the ass because they never do what you want them to. But this one wasn't too bad for me, and yeah, you just kind of go around these different environments. You also have a timer though, so you're always looking at your watch to be like, well, I don't have enough time to speak to everybody and do every minigame, so I'm going to do as many as I can, and then you get to the end, and there's kind of like, when I read about it, I was like, I'm probably not going to do all this stuff, because it's like you just get to one ending and then you can kind of be done with it, but there's so much more stuff in there. There's a lot of charm involved, so I was like, I'm just going to keep playing after the credits just to see. And it's a very short game anyway. I think I hit the first credits about 2 hours, and it took me another couple of hours to go through every single person and play every minigame in the game to get the true ending basically. So I got 3 different endings. One was the first one, a second one where it kind of leaves a little bit of mystery open, and it's like the third one where you collect everything and you come to the end and you finally do it. And they do a nice thing where they let you skip a bunch of stuff, so you don't have to do stuff you've already done on a second run. So it's pretty streamlined. It doesn't even feel like you're doing a second run. It feels like I'm just continuing where I left off, but I'm not worrying about the timer anymore basically, which I think is quite good, and encouraged me to explore all the districts, because there's like 3 different districts of the city, and each one has like 5 or 6 characters in them that you can engage with, you can get dialogue from, and it's fun because every time you talk to somebody you have like a checklist of like, who are you, and like how do you know the guy that we're talking about, and like what is the event that's going to happen, or what's going on, and you kind of slowly piece things together as you talk to people. And you also get a every time you finish their game, you get a kind of family crest emblem. A lot of them are kind of from the same alligator family, and at the main hub area you can talk to this alligator's mum, and she has a whole family tree, and part of the game is to fill in everybody's identity as you go along. So you kind of fill in the family tree, and by the end you have an entire picture of who everybody is and how they're connected and all that sort of stuff. So it's neat. I think it's has a great style to it. The animation is fantastic, and it feels fresh because every single game that you play is different and unique and has some like little twist to it. I'd say some of them get a little bit annoying or repetitive, or can be like a little frustrating. So there's one where you have to, it's like a baby monitor, and you have to keep these ghosts away from this baby by switching switches and changing stuff, and it took me a couple of times to get it, and it was just got a little bit annoying, but I think aside from some of the jankiness and some of the mechanics, it overwhelmingly has like a charming vibe and a cool kind of, I don't know, the music really fits the tone as well. There's a classic kind of feel to it, in a way that I really enjoyed, and not black and white, but has that almost, I don't know, it wasn't very saturated as a palette. It feels like the saturation's kind of been taken out of it, but it fits the tone that they're going for. So,
and it's on Switch?
It is, yes. Nice. I played it on PC. I actually originally started it on Steam Deck, and I realized on Steam Deck it wasn't really built for it because so many of the games require a mouse, and the mouse functionality on Steam Deck is really, let's say, awkward because you use that touchpad thing and it doesn't work very well. And if you use the touchscreen on a Steam Deck, it basically acts as a mouse, so it doesn't work in the same way. Whereas on Switch, I believe it's optimized for the touchscreen itself, so it's properly made for that. So it makes sense to play this handheld on Switch. And you know, it's a 2D game. It's very very easy to run and stuff. So I imagine it's a very good version on Switch as well. So definitely check it out. It only took me like 4 hours total to do everything. One thing that I would critique is like you have to repeat the end section multiple times, and the end section is this whole like walking through a hotel with a flashlight and trying to find your way in the dark. And by the third time, I was like, I wish I could skip this basically, because I'm like, I've done this before. I know what I'm doing, but that was the only real kind of black mark on the ending, because I liked it quite a bit. So. That's later Alligator. And then to close out my rock block bally is going back to a classic game, a game that I have been meaning to play for a long time, and which I promised myself I wouldn't buy any more of the collections until I'd finished it. It's Mega Man 6, the 6th Mega Man game on NES. They certainly made a lot of those back in the day. And this is the last game that I hadn't played in the first Mega Man Legacy collection.
They put 6 on one collection.
They did, yeah. Well, the reason it is because the 7th Mega Man game was a Super Nintendo game, right. And then the 8th one was a PS1 game, I want to say.
There's only one Mega Man on Super Nintendo.
I believe. Well, here's the thing. I was going to say with the Legacy collections, there's the Mega Man X games, which is what happened on Super Nintendo. Is that they made the X series, which is. It's really what Mega Man is known for on the Super Nintendo, is the X series of games. So there's also Mega Man X Legacy Collection 1 and 2. So I own, I think, the first Mega Man X Legacy Collection, as well as Mega Man Legacy Collection 2, and I need to get the second X Collection. They also have the Zero collections on there now. Look, they made a lot of fucking Mega Man games back in the day. They really, no one stopped them. No one said to Keiji Inafune, hey, slow down, my dude. He was like, no, this train continues at a pace and we're never going to stop it. So yes, I've finally finished one of these collections by closing out Mega Man 6. And I think Mega Man 6 is very high up my list, I'll say. I think that 5 and 6 are kind of similar in a lot of senses. They feel like the moment in the series where they figured it out from let's streamline these a bit more, let's not be bullshit difficult, let's have weirder bosses, let's kind of take a look at the power-ups and how they work and make them a little more streamlined. I think this is the most streamlined of all of them. It doesn't do the thing that I hate about Mega Man 3. I put up a ranking after I finished this of my favorite Mega Mans. Mega Man 3 is always on the bottom, and I know that's sacrilege to like lots of people, because people love Mega Man 3 and they grew up with it, and it's probably the second most popular one after Mega Man 2. Mega Man 3 commits the cardinal sin of being really fucking annoying with its second stage, where you beat all the Robot Masters in Mega Man 3, and then the second stage of it is 4 more stages, but these stages are basically double the length, where you fight through one section, fight a boss in the middle, and then have to fight through another section and fight another fucking boss at the end. And you have to do that 4 times, and it sucks, and it's bullshit, and I think it's the worst part of the NES Mega Man series, and I appreciate people, love it, but I think it is my least favorite, because it's bullshit difficult in a lot of ways that I just didn't appreciate. So Mega Man 3 is always the bottom of my list, but 6, I think, handles it really nicely, where you beat the 6 Robot Masters, and then you get a kind of, you usually get the Wily Castle section, right, where it's like, now you're going to go through 4 levels in a row before fighting Wily at the end. So they do that once with a character called Mr. X, who you can tell from the beginning is just Dr. Wily in sunglasses. Essentially, it's like a stupid thing, but it's like, go through Mr. X's castle, and it's like, haha, it was me, Dr. Wily, all along, and then you go through another 4 levels, which are the Wily Castle levels. So I like that structure to it. It's nice because it gives you the Robot Masters, but then it also gives you like a few more levels afterwards, which are well designed and have some fun bosses and stuff like that. Another streamlining aspect is that Rush now becomes part of Mega Man. So in the past, what would happen is you would be like, oh, I need to get over this gap. I'm going to call down Rush and jump on him and he'll jet me over. Or I'll call him down and I'll jump on him and he'll bounce me over. Now, you are Rush, basically. So those power-ups just become part of you. And so, like, instead of jumping on him to jet around the place, you just have a jetpack. You just turn red and you have a jetpack, and you can control it like any other game where you like hover the jump button to like hover. And it feels like pretty innovative for an NES game, and like those mechanics, like, because you didn't see a lot of stuff like that back then. And it feels like you can tell that this is a late era NES game, and they've done a lot of these, because a lot of those systems just feel a bit more advanced, a bit more fluid. It's the same thing with like there's like a heavy power up where you can do a big punch basically, and you can charge it up and stuff like that. And the charging still remains here. I will say that charging, once they introduced it, after I think Mega Man 3. I think Mega Man 4 introduced charging. Mega Man 3 introduced the slide. The slide is still here as well. But as soon as they introduced the charge beam in Mega Man 4 onwards, it feels like that's the only way you should be playing, or using the other power-ups, because really, when you try and fight some of those bosses with just the pea shooter, there's no chance in hell you're going to get through them. Like, they just don't do enough damage. You have to be holding a charge. Slight frustrating thing is if you get hit while holding a charge, you lose the charge and you have to restart it again, so there's a little bit of fumbling going on there. But I do think that overall this game makes things a little bit more fluid with that stuff. Like, once you get the power up, it feels like, okay, now I can go into this boss fight and I know what the weakness is and I can take them down relatively easy. It's always just a little hard at the beginning. My least favorite part of a Mega Man game is figuring out how to defeat that first boss, because that first boss, you don't have shit. You don't have any power-ups, you have no way to do it easily, so you're going to have to just grind through in that difficult fight and do it. And some of the bosses are weird here, like the Centaur Man, who I think is one of the weirdest bosses in the series, because their attack is also not very good. They just do like one beam and it goes past you and then it hits the wall and then it spreads out into like 5 different beams, and they just do that constantly, and that's really the only attack they use. So it feels like they're maybe getting to the end of their tether with like boss design and ideas for enemies and stuff like that. Some of them are just kind of like not reskins, but like ideas used again. It's like, here's Flame Man, who's like the same as like a Fire Man in Mega Man 2 or whatever. Eventually you get to the point, I think, in the X series where they get a bit more creative with them and they're more like animal focused. But I think the ones that we've gotten to by this point are just like, yeah, they are, I don't know, there's some weird guys in here, and that's who you're playing against. So there is sometimes a balance of, is the level hard or is the boss hard? And it feels like it swings both ways, where sometimes I'll breeze through a level and the boss will be really difficult, versus the level will be impossible, but then the boss will be super easy. So there's an interesting kind of balance there, and I think that's mainly in the Robot Master levels. Once you get past that, it feels a lot better. And then there's also this whole like unlocking letters thing, where so those power-ups like the jet and the kind of super strong move, they let you unlock different paths, and there's alternate routes to finish some of these levels, and if you do those alternate routes, you collect letters, kind of like I guess in Donkey Kong, but you're only collecting one letter, and the letters are BEAT, which spell beat, and beat is the name of the little bird who follows Mega Man around, and you can see him in box art and stuff like that. And if you do that, you then unlock Beat as a suit that you can use, and Beat basically is a little bird who comes and like homes in on enemies and just attacks for you. I didn't really use Beat that much. It seemed like Beat was more useful in Mega Man 5 as opposed to 6, but it's there if you want to do it, and it's a nice little prelude to what the X games would do, because the X games ask you to go back 2 levels and find pieces of armor that then give you more power and abilities and stuff like that. So the X series kind of ran with that idea, but it's nice to see the seeds of it even on the NES, where they're like, oh no, if you do this alternate route, you can get this thing that will eventually give you a different kind of costume. So I thought that was quite neat. And yeah, I would say that this ranks pretty highly. I said in that tweet that it was my 3rd favorite. I think I actually like it more than 5, because it just feels like the most modern, the most refined version of Mega Man. So I would probably put this as my 2nd favorite after Mega Man 2. Wow. I really enjoyed it. Nice. And I think it's a nice Mega Man game to jump into if you're wanting, you know, this type of flavor but don't want to be frustrated by it, because I think it balances that stuff really nicely. So Mega Man 6, finally done with the NES games. I can move on to the next Legacy Collection and play the games that people like a lot less than those ones. I think 7 and 8 do not have a good reputation. 9 and 10 are super weird, because those are games that look exactly like Mega Man 1 through 6, but they were made for WiiWare. So they were made on the Wii for WiiWare. And I booted up the second Mega Man Legacy Collection, and it turns out, guess what? No fucking rewinding in this one, so that's going to be great. That's going to really help. There's still save-stating stuff, but it feels like it works a bit different. I don't know if they do that for Mega Man 9 and 10 as well, but 7 certainly doesn't quite have the same pizzazz behind it. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But my Mega Man journey continues. I'll, just like Dragon Quest Final Fantasy, I'll eventually have beaten all the Mega Man games. So there you go. Sweet. That is me. Bally, you have been playing a hell of a lot of our little friend Pikmin 4.
We've been playing a bit more Pikmin 4. I think last time when we spoke about Pikmin 4, I was maybe 5 hours in. If you told me at the start of 2023 that I would spend about 40 hours playing Pikmin 4 and that I've not even done everything in that game yet, I would have been stunned. Because, this game, I said this on Twitter, has more endings than Lord of the Rings Return of the King. Like, this game just goes on and on and on in a good way. Like, I think that while what you're doing is systematic, there was definitely enough variety that kept me wanting to come back. Now, we should warn here that we're gonna get into like vague level spoilers for the end game. So there's like an initial set of credits at about, I don't know, 15 hours. And we're gonna talk about all the hours 40 minus 15 going on from there.
So I'll put a timestamp here, or I guess like what you can do is you can just skip forward to the news segment because we'll take a break after this, and
and I'm not going to talk about any specific bosses or anything, but I think that what this game does well is there's a constant variety of the locations and the enemies in particular. Like, yes, there are bosses, and when I say bosses, like big enemies that do repeat themselves. I genuinely think like they don't repeat themselves to the point of like, oh, and here we go again, this guy. It feels like there's enough freshness, especially in like some of the dungeons where you're going down level, and they do have like, especially near the end game, there's like a real challenge. I think there's one like marathon dungeon. Is it like 10 levels, MBZ? I can't even remember. Like, but I think that dungeon does have like new enemies almost on every single level. And if I say new enemies,
it's 20 levels.
Is it
20?
I want to say it is
the
20.
Very last
right,
one. Yeah.
And I just got real satisfaction constantly with this game, where it's a great combination of chill, because the main game you're not, racing against time. You've got unlimited days. And then you've got the fun of like some really quite challenging at times enemies, and just like this balance of exploration and combat, and it still feels like a really unique formula that this game is just doing so much better than the other games. And I think it's even the small stuff in Pikmin that they just get right, where it's the music, it's the sound design, it's the controls. Like, there's a real synergy to like the throwing of Pikmin, and the game renders. You can have 100 Pikmin maximum, obviously, and the game renders them so seamlessly. I didn't have any issues with like slowdown or anything, and it's that sound design and all the small things that Pikmin, I think, just gets right. And I thoroughly like loved this game right to the end. Like, I think those last couple of areas have some pretty tricky Dandori challenges, but I still thought that they were really good fun. And at the start of the game, I thought, is Dandori really where Pikmin shines? And I think the combination of having those Dandori challenges, but also the kind of more chilled overworld stuff, I think it's like a really nice combination. And I just loved every moment of it, honestly. I think that I was excited for Pikmin 4, and I thought it was going to be pretty good when I had started it last time. But now I'm just kind of in awe at how great this game is overall. Like, I think Pikmin 4 could be like, the Fire Emblem Awakening of the series, hopefully.
It's certainly selling that way. Like in Japan especially, it's doing extremely well in terms of numbers. So
right. I think there was even a comment about like they promised like the wait for the next Pikmin will be much shorter, and I could imagine the first few years.
Yeah, I heard Miyamoto said that it's almost done, Pikmin 5, so it's coming pretty soon.
So I think in the first few years of the Switch 2 or whatever, I think we're going to get a Pikmin 5. But like this game is awesome. It's got that level of Nintendo polish, and I'd put it in that like Luigi's Mansion 3 category, honestly. It's that high in my mind. And what's wild is there's still Dandori challenges, and I did do the Olimar challenge at the end of the game.
Yeah, how did you find that thing? Because I started that and I was like, is this like a totally brand new areas and everything? And it turns out not quite, but it feels like it's retreading in a different way, because the starting area is different from the main game for that. But
yeah,
you still have a lot of areas to go through, and kind of it's where you take classic Pikmin. Like they hid a classic Pikmin game inside this non-classic Pikmin game,
which is awesome. It takes, in the same way that the overworld is chill for the main game, and then you have the more tense dungeons and the even more tense Dandori challenges, It removes all the dungeons, all the Dandori challenges, and turns the overworld into one grand Dandori challenge.
Oh, interesting. So there's no caves and stuff in that entire thing?
There's no caves. So you are playing I guess each day is maybe, I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes?
Right, yeah.
It's probably closer to 10 minutes, but... And you're getting your abilities gradually by collecting more ship parts. So at the start, you can't even recall Pikmin. You don't even have... Olimar's dog is Moss, not Ochi. You don't have Moss. You are literally just Olimar by himself, and you have no Pikmin, and you literally pick that first red Pikmin and you build from there to the point where I think I did the whole thing. You have 15 days to do it, and I was quite tight by the end. I think I did it in 13 days, and it uses the first 4 areas of the game. Those areas are the same, but they've removed all the dungeons and there's new enemies in them. They obviously have the 30 ship parts that you're having to collect. I loved it. I think that it's really nice because I wouldn't have enjoyed it so much if it was the start of the game, but I feel like by the end, you really honed your skills, and then you've enjoyed a few more Dandori challenges. And then the game's like, right, well, here's this. And it took me, I think, 3.5 hours overall. I can't remember what my clock said.
I think it was 3.5 it said or something on your thing. Yeah,
exactly. And it was awesome. It was tense, but I really enjoyed it and it felt very satisfying. And I've not played Pikmin 1. I played quite a bit of Pikmin 2, and that game did have some stress. Not as much as Pikmin 1 apparently, but if you're that person who's like, oh, don't like Pikmin 4, it's not got the stress of days and this kind of thing. It's nice that this exists for that crowd, and I'm totally here for both aspects of Pikmin, and I love that aspect is in this game because I think it's a really nice mode to just say, you know what, let's see what my Dandori skills are like, and let's try this overworld exploration style thing. Plus, also, it's a prequel to the main story, main game story, which I think is a nice little twist as well. There's nothing,
especially because you get teased it at the very beginning of the game where you play as Olimar.
Exactly, you're playing part of that basically. Now there's no big and that led to this after you beat it or anything, but it's still really satisfying. And then you unlock more stuff even after that that I've not gone back to yet, but it's the kind of Dandori dungeon style things that are very end game stuff that I might play a bit of ahead of Game of the Year, but yeah, that stuff is really cool. I'm really, really, really impressed by Pikmin 4. How did you find the game since last time?
Yeah, very similar. So I didn't end up doing the Olimar challenge. I'd like to move on and do that at some point, but it's kind of nice to have something not done in Pikmin 4 because it means you can go back to it, and similar to Tears of the Kingdom.
It would be a very satisfying thing to play at the end of the year, just that Olimar challenge.
Bit of a reminder, right? And yeah, similar with Tears of the Kingdom, where I would like to go back to both these games right before we do Game of the Year stuff and revisit and do more of the shrines I haven't done, do more of the Olimar challenge that I haven't done, and remind myself why I really like both these games, right? So I think it's good to leave it open. I ended up that last dungeon hearing from people it was a big step up in challenge, and so actually one of the things that I did was I went and farmed a bunch of purple Pikmin. I needed them because there's one you can't get 100% in the game until you get that one giant gold bar.
I did the same as you.
Yeah, gold bar requires 1,000 Pikmin, and the easiest way to do that is 100 purples. So I decided, all right,
it's the only way to do it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it really is. There's no other way. Because I was thinking, could you do something with Ochi? But Ochi can only do a maximum of 100. So really, you could do 9. Actually, I guess you could technically do 900 plus Ochi, but you can't do that because I initially tried that, then I realized Ochi can't get up to the area where the gold bar is.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you actually do need 100 purples in order to do it. So I went and got 100 of them. There's one cave in the last area where it's very easy to just do the first level, and you get 10 in that first level. So I did that a bunch of times, didn't take too long, and I had 100 purples. And so for the last level, I decided I'm going to take 50 of those with me, and then spread the rest out over other ones that I need, basically. And yeah, I really enjoyed the challenge of it. The rewind was really important in the late game, especially some of those levels where there was the big roly fat worm guy who...
God, that one was maybe the toughest level in that dungeon.
It's really tricky.
Other than the final boss. I thought the final boss was quite tricky. But
yeah, definitely, especially because the final boss requires every single type of Pikmin to stop those attacks from happening. So yeah, I really liked the big dog, basically, who's the final boss, and thought that was good. But yeah, that big rolling fat worm was like, you had to jump over him with the pads, avoid the rocks falling, then like usually loop back around before you could throw a bunch of Pikmin at him to do damage. So it was a nice boss fight, and I definitely think
I managed to cheese that boss, if you want to know.
Oh really? Okay.
So if you just use like rock Pikmin, they can't get squished.
That makes sense.
So
yeah,
I just threw in a bunch of them. Some of them did get eaten at the top end.
Okay.
But
yes.
Yeah, they can't get squished, so they just keep bouncing off him, and it eventually does kill them.
Oh, interesting. That's cool. Yeah, that's definitely a cool way around it. And I like that. I like that you can kind of choose your approach with Pikmin. And you can kind of decide who are your favorites, which your favorites.
And I'm really impressed by like the new Pikmin in terms like the ice Pikmin especially.
Ice is so fucking good.
It's
holy shit.
Powerful in combat, but I think like the whole idea of freezing planes of water into ice that you then walk over, like it's a really nice puzzle element to the game. And there's one Dandori challenge, I think it's in that final area, where you need to like freeze areas of water, walk over them, come around, and it's like for this fire and ice style level and thing. Like, I thought that stuff was really well designed, and by the end of the game I really loved like Dandori and that satisfaction of trying to be efficient and defeating enemies and using Ochi in interesting ways, where like you can just send Ochi to he was like my guy that just defeated enemies, and then I'd spend the Pikmin on other things and do these things at the same time. And it's nice because when you're doing the Dandori challenges, as like the person challenging you, the leafling or whatever, they will comment on like, that's good Dandori, or don't leave your Pikmin standing. So like they're commentating on how well you're doing in the moment and kind of reminding you how to do a bit better.
Yeah, those last ones were super tricky. There was one that I actually ended up skipping because it was just too difficult for me to get through. I was doing it like a couple of times. I was like, man, this one is the one where you have to, there's like an upper area, and you have to like get Pikmin.
You can skip them? I thought you had to do them all.
No, I don't know. I got to a point and they were like, oh, do you want to skip this? I was like, I guess I will. So
okay.
yeah, it's nice they have that accessibility.
That one is tough. Yeah, that one.
I think that was the hardest one in the game for me. I was like, I just don't, this one is really difficult. Like you really have to know exactly what order to do things in and make sure you just don't it feels like you don't have enough power with the Pikmin to deal with the enemies as well. So
that's where I used Ochi a bit more as a tank, just to kind of help out with that stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Did you complete all the night challenges?
No, I was close to doing them, but I didn't quite do it.
The final couple are pretty damn tough. They're like some really powerful enemies.
Are you like defending 3 places as opposed to 2? Ever?
No, the maximum's 2.
Okay.
But there's basically like a really big enemy that and then they throw multiples of that plus another really big enemy.
I see, okay.
And you have to preempt. Before I had to like go and attack this enemy, do half damage to it because I didn't have enough time, then come back to another location as Olimar, wait until that enemy gets activated to attack the base you're defending, I can't remember the name, and the hub, and then attack it and do the other half of damage, because I had to like strategically do half damage, come back and let it come at me. It was just like, oh yeah, I really had to come up with a strategy, and it took me like, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 times total. It was tough, but very satisfying. I started the game being a bit like, these night missions are a bit of a chore, but by the end I like what they're doing. Like this game is ultimately, it's got these game mechanics, the Pikmin mechanics, collect Pikmin, throw them at enemies, and then it feels like it's using them in different ways, whether that's the overworld exploration or the Dandori or the dungeons or the night missions where it's kind of like tower defense. It's like a really nice way of showing off, hey, we can actually make 4 kind of different styles of games in one game. And I think they pull it off. I was pleased with the night missions by the end. However, I still want to give credit to the Wild at Heart for incorporating using night Pikmin like overnight, because I think that's one area I'd love Pikmin 5 to like try and incorporate, is like, can you actually have a type of Pikmin you stay up late with and do some stuff at night, because that would be really cool, just to the whole day-night cycle.
Yeah, or even just like a Pikmin game where you never return to a hub, where you stay out and you just have to deal with nighttime as it is. Cool.
Yeah.
And then I wonder if that's the direction to go.
I do like the hub, though. I think it's a nice idea to collect all the people, and then each of the people do different things.
Mm-hmm.
And you have that area where you can kind of chill out, plan, and it's not timed or anything. There's no pressure. So
yeah, it's nice looking at your kind of treasures as well, and having those little encyclopedias. Like there's certain ones where you collect parts of a thing, and then you can see the whole thing. So the robot's a good example, where you collect all the parts, and then you can see the entire robot like built together.
I didn't know about the robot. I checked out the train track.
Right, yes. Yeah. So there's a few of those, and there's also like, just getting that fucking GBA micro and things like that.
Wave Blue Storm.
Just looking at those little shiny things, I think is really, really neat. So it's nice, and I think it really is the ultimate Pikmin game in a lot of ways. They just stuff every single aspect of the series in here, and it works super well. And control wise, I was surprised by how well they made it work, given how well Pikmin 3 worked previously.
Exactly, yeah. So. And even though there wasn't the 3 characters that you're controlling simultaneously like Pikmin 3, and I was wondering if the game was going to build to that, and it never did, I was still pleased with the strategizing using Ochi. And even though it was just 2 points, the fact that Ochi can do stuff that Olimar can't do, and not Olimar, your character, and vice versa, means that I still think there was enough strategy there, and there were days where I was really trying to rush and get stuff wrapped up before nighttime, and I still felt that pressure in a good way. And yes, Pikmin 3 has the 3 officers all working in tandem, but maybe that's something I can explore with Pikmin 5, and I certainly still miss many of the bosses from Pikmin 3. I think they were really cool and like epic, and there are epic fights in this game, just not as many.
They happen a little bit later, and like they appear, but none of them I would say are unique. Like a lot of them are retreads of things you've seen before, or retreads of things in previous Pikmin games.
No, totally. And imagine like 3 more bosses in this game that were of the ilk of the final boss, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
Or just one at the end of every other world. If there's 6 worlds, let's do one at the end of every other world. That would have been just the cherry on top.
And make them the types of bosses where you can't do them in one. Like that's one of the things I really liked about Pikmin 3 is like you are forced to run away and come back and fight them another day.
That's really cool. I like that aspect as well. Like Pikmin 4. Wow. Like it's a really special game. And this is a year where it's arguably the best year in gaming since 1998, and
sure.
I would probably agree in many aspects. But I'm sure not enough people talk about Pikmin 4 in that debate. But for me, it's up there. I'm really, really impressed by Pikmin 4, and it was a joy. It was a joy to play in this. It was so easy to pick up and play, stick a podcast on, and just to explore. And yes, a lot of it is just very base level collecting. It's not particularly strategic, but the areas where there are strategy and stuff like the night missions, it does mix it up enough where I was just super impressed by everything this game had to offer. I think it's a really, really special game.
Yeah, it's a hell of a thing. And hey, here's to more Pikmin, I hope. Certainly seems like that's going to be the case.
4 entries in 20 years.
Yeah.
23 years. It was Pikmin 1, 2000, 2001.
I guess it was a GameCube launch title,
it was a launch
right?
Title, yeah. Along with Wave Race Blue Storm.
Yeah, I guess that's why it was included as a shout out. So there you go. I think that is going to do us. That's going to close us out for the first segment. But don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back after this break with some news. See you in a bit. All right, everybody, welcome back to the second half of today's show. I realised at the beginning, Bally, I didn't actually ask you to say what the layout of the show was. Bally, what is the second segment? What are we doing here?
There's been a bit of news, MBZ, just a few bits and bobs. We've got the Mario Wonder Direct. Charles Martinet is no longer the voice of Mario, and there was a strange video that came out today, day of recording, which was weird. And Tears of the Kingdom is not getting any DLC, says Anuma. So,
yeah. So a few different things to hit. But yes, as always, our recording schedule never lines up with Nintendo. There's rumours of a Nintendo Direct coming, Bally.
Yeah, that is so happening next week.
It's happening next week. Actually, the week you're listening to this show, there's going to be one probably. And again, we're going to have to wait until next episode for us to talk about it. So thanks, Nintendo, for continually being on point with all your timing. Just wonderful for this show. Just great for our numbers and everything. So appreciate it. But Mario Wonder Direct happened, which was interesting and cool and showed off some new stuff. How are you feeling about this game, Bally, after seeing that whole presentation?
Yeah, I'm about at the same level as the announcement, really. I didn't see... When the announcement came, I was like, this looks cool. I like that they're mixing up things, but at its core, it still feels very New Super Mario Brothers, and that's got all its kind of baggage, those connotations that go with that, and I didn't see anything in this kind of mini direct that, dissuades me from that view, really. I'm still excited for this game, but boy, when you consider like how I feel about 2D Mario compared to so many of the kind of podcast circles I listen to, like people are damn hot on 2D Mario compared to me, and
yeah.
I'm hoping this game will still be very fun, but my expectations are it's going to be a very solid 2D Mario game, and I'm still going to wish that 2D Mario was bigger and bolder. And I didn't see... Yes, there are bold things in this game, but they're bold within the framework of 2D Mario. They're not bold. Yes. They're not going beyond that boundary.
No, they're not breaking down the fundamentals of what this has always been.
Yeah.
And
although Bowser is now a castle.
That's true, yeah. No, very important change that was needed. But, like, you look at this direct and it's like, oh, it's an underwater level. And, like, things are different in the underwater level, but Mario moves the same way he's always moved underwater.
Yeah.
And, it's going to be a left-to-right affair. We're not breaking any boundaries or doing anything bold or crazy with the fundamental structure, the fundamental idea of a Mario level of a
that we know of.
Game. That we know of, yeah. And I'm sure like things like the Wonder Flowers shake things up a lot, right? And every single one does a totally different thing. And some of the ones they showed here are like, well, sometimes you just turn into a fucking balloon Mario and go up to the screen. And it will just like completely change the level. Or like one of them reminded me of Yoshi Touch and Go, where they're falling through clouds to the ground.
Right.
Stuff like that. I think the more of that stuff that's in there, the better. And like if every level has something like that where it's totally unique and different, I think this will be something pretty special. Ultimately, I think they're probably going to repeat a few ideas and things will come back. But
I was gonna say, and I think Guillaume said this on RFN. But is there anything there that really rewrites the rules much more than say the changing abilities in Yoshi's Island, for example, where you're like the helicopter and then you're the drill and then you're like. I'm not seeing anything that's way beyond some of those ideas personally. Like these are just different ways of transforming. And yes, they change up the gameplay and yes, they're exciting. And I think you've nailed it that if these ideas, there's one idea per level that doesn't come back, unless it's maybe something endgame, who knows. But if it doesn't repeat itself, like a game like, what was the Kirby game from last year?
Forgotten Land,
exactly, where the first 3 hours of that game were fantastic, and then the final 3 worlds where they were repeating the ideas of the first 3 worlds, in my view, fell flat a lot more, but mainly because they were repeating ideas like car Kirby, and now you're the vending machine Kirby, and now you're the like. If Mario Wonder can keep that freshness and keeps its like campaign short enough where it doesn't feel the need. I mean, we obviously know there's 7 worlds and probably an 8th.
Yeah, we know that's a lie, because it always happens with Mario games where they're like, well, actually. But to be fair, like, maybe not, because the 2D Mario games don't really follow the pattern of what 3D Land, 3D World did. So maybe it is just 7 worlds, and maybe there is only 1 extra world. But like, my expectation for Mario Wonder is reviewers will get an embargo that says you can only talk about the first X number of these, and then after release, everyone's like, oh, it's going to be like all these other things happening with it. But we'll see how that goes.
So we know about Elephant Mario. I want there to be like Cheetah Mario that is embargoed, and you don't know about Cheetah Mario until you unlock those second 7 worlds. You know, I want that kind of crazy level of shit, and I'm skeptical that it's not there.
I think Elephant Mario might be the only animal power-up we get, especially because in this it's shown that multiple other characters turn into elephants as well. It's not like I think kind of funny we're speculating, like, what if every character got their own power-up of, like, Daisy becomes a giraffe, or, like, Luigi becomes, I don't know, a swallow. You know, it's like just weird transformations that are different for each character, and therefore it gives you a reason to use each character. One of the weird things I found about this, they were like, and every character plays the same, so you can choose your favorite one.
Really interesting decision.
Whereas, like, I guess that makes sense if you want everyone to kind of be on an even playing field, but one of the ideas behind different characters in the past, Mario 2 especially, is the distinctive differences between them, where Peach can float and Luigi has a flutter kick, and
that was a real cool aspect of 3D World, and like playing that multiplayer on Wii U was just like, now Toad's speeding through the level, like, that's cool, he can do that, and jumps a little shorter and that kind of thing, like, I like that, and now that's gone. So that's cool.
Yeah, totally. And I think that having, we were just talking about this before we started recording, but the idea that Yoshi is now a character who can't die kind of sucks, I think, for people who like to play as Yoshi, especially because Yoshi has...
Just let any character not die, and any character can die. Like,
just make it an option. Like, just do a tick box. It's so fucking stupid. Like, if I'm a Yoshi fan and I want to play as Yoshi, well, what if I want to play as Yoshi but die and have the ability to be knocked back and stuff like that? And they're just like, nope. Like, this is the fucked up thing. Like, they have multiple colored Yoshis. They could have been like, the red one is the one that doesn't.
Exactly.
And the green one's a regular Yoshi. But they're like, no, all the fucking Yoshis are the same. Like, God, some really baffling decisions when it comes to that stuff, and Nintendo have always been like that, and they will continue to be like that, I think, when it comes to making these decisions that they're like, no, this is the Nintendo experience, and this is how you'll experience it. That's a little frustrating, I would say, especially because Yoshi has the unique power of people being able to ride on him and use that ability, and also, like, suck people up into his mouth and turn them into eggs and things like that. Like, he's got a cool power set, but it means basically that he can't turn into an elephant. Like, he is invincible and he has these cool powers, but he can't take any of the other powers either. Yeah. So,
well, at least there's online co-op.
Yes, definitely. You can play together with your friends in the same space. I mean, like, I think we all knew it was going to be a clusterfuck given how bad the co-op in Mario Maker 2 was. Like, maybe the worst online implementation in a Nintendo game, and that's saying something, but like, the lag on Mario Maker 2 online, unfucking fathomably bad, like unconscionable. Like, it's absolutely an embarrassment, frankly. And Nintendo, I think in this instance, were like, well, we can't have that again, so let's not do it. Let's do this weird thing where instead is a bunch of ghosts of your friends that appear in the level. Oh, but no, you can do a lobby with your friends, but they're all just ghosts instead. And I just don't get it, really. Like, I think there was such a thing that people loved with the local multiplayer and the new Super Mario Brothers games, with the chaos of having people together and you can bubble and all that sort of stuff. And all people want is for them to just do that online, but make it fucking work. That's all people want.
Because it's 2023, and you should. Yeah. For like a 2D platforming game. Come on. Mm-hmm. Like, and okay, here's the thing that drove me mad. Now, in the last episode, we were talking about Federation Force, and we referenced me reacting to a Nintendo Treehouse Live, where they were demoing Triforce Heroes.
Yes.
And we were moaning about the lack of voice chat. And Audrey Drake, who was working for Nintendo at the time and was demoing Triforce Heroes, said, but it's actually an advantage to not have the voice chat, because now you can encourage people with your pom-poms and your animation things that game had, right?
It adds a level of challenge to the game, of course. You know?
It adds this level. She was saying it as a positive that this game didn't have voice chat. There was some comment in this direct, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something along the lines of, now you have the advantage of not playing with your friends directly, but you are able to still play with your friends. So there was something like, it's a positive because it takes the pressure.
Because they're not going to get in the way of you,
type
of thing. Yeah,
bollocks. Like, it's just like, what? What? Stop spinning everything as a positive when you can't do it, or don't mention it. Like, why does not everything in the game has to be a positive that you spin in this? Oh, I just hate the party line from Nintendo. It drives me mad.
Yeah. Well, they're never going to change, are they? They're always going to do this. So I guess it's just. It's one of those things
maybe
where
you'd want to walk off the cliff as Link because you've got Joy-Con drift, because then you can experience the glider. You know, it's like, that's why we put Joy-Con drift in the game. It's like, screw you, I don't want a Joy-Con drift.
Oh dear. Yeah, no, man, that's one of those things. Yeah, that I totally I agree with. I appreciate, and yeah, it's Nintendo. It's part of the reason why I love Nintendo. Honestly, like, is stupid shit like this. But it's endlessly frustrating for sure. But there's a lot of interesting stuff still going on with this game. And I think one of the things that they brought up that really got my attention was this whole badge system, right? Where you can choose these different badges in each level, and each one has a different spin on it. Where one of them was a vine that was a grappling hook, essentially, and so you can grapple hook your way onto platforms and walls. One of them is like a Super Meat Boy style single wall jump, where you can wall jump your way up spaces. There's like a bunch of different ones that they have that will apply to different levels. So like a lava level, for example, you could turn on the safety badge where it would let you fall in the lava and not be hurt by it, type of deal. And I like that as an idea. I think that there's definitely going to be a meta of like some badges that are like better than others, but I also think that they're going to design the levels in a way to fit the badges and be like,
you've played this level vanilla, now you can do the cool speedrun version with the drill, or not the drill, sorry, the badge.
I would not be surprised if like that is part of the post game where they unlock challenges that are like, you have to use this badge.
Yeah, and that's where the online could be good, where they do focus on the leaderboards, and it's like, here's the leaderboard for this level with this badge, here's the leaderboard for this level with this badge, and they kind of divvy it up, and then you're ultimately getting a lot more bang for your buck in terms of number of levels. Even though it's the same level, it's designed in a way that is completely differently playable with a certain badge, you know?
Yeah, and I wonder if like there's an advantage to going back to older levels with newer badges and finding things that you couldn't find before. There is a kind of a Mario World overworld style thing going on here. It doesn't feel as interesting maybe, but we don't know whether some of those things will lead to secret exits or secret places to find. There might be some of that stuff in there. But there are sections where like you're gated by wonder flowers, so you have to find enough wonder seeds, whatever they're called, in order to unlock certain levels. So some levels will be locked behind that, and I think that's neat. I think that's okay, because part of the charm, part of the desire of this game is to see all the wonder effects and to do all the wonder flowers. So I feel like it's something that I'm going to do for every level anyway, so it doesn't feel like a Donkey Kong thing where you have to collect all the letters that are hidden throughout a level in order to unlock a level. This feels like far more like, well, you're going to do this as a mainline thing anyway, so here we're going to hand you a way to open a level. So I think that's okay, and I don't mind that approach too much. I guess like on the power-up stuff, as we were talking about, like maybe people could turn into different animals. Like it seems like there are 2 more power-ups they showed off, but they are totally different and distinct and not in keeping with the idea of the elephant. So we have Bubble Mario and we have Drill Mario. I think both have a lot of possibility and capability and interesting mechanics tied to them. They don't feel as new though. Like Bubble Mario to me feels like a riff on Cappy from Odyssey.
Oh, I was going to suggest Cloud Mario from Galaxy 2.
Oh, true. Yeah, there's a way that works as well.
There's also
but
a Drill Mario in Galaxy 2.
Exactly. Yes, totally. So they both feel like riffs on previous concepts, but done in 2D is slightly different, where like the the bubble there feels like a tool for getting to places you wouldn't be able to get to otherwise, right? Placing down a platform that you wouldn't have had access to in midair to give you an advantage and find a secret that's hidden high up somewhere.
Supposedly there was some fan-made game of was it Mario 2? I can't remember which one. And they literally had this bubble mechanic,
this power-up, like a ROM hack type of deal.
Exactly. Yeah. So Nintendo have just taken it.
Sure, yeah. And yeah, Drill Mario seems like another interesting kind of approach in the sense that he can burrow into the ground and the ceiling, and so it gives you a kind of different approach on enemies. There are some enemies who are like probably not damageable aside from behind the ceiling, so you have to like drill behind, get behind them, and then attack them from below or above, which I think is definitely neat. And I would hope that they expand that to be something that lets you burrow through the ground to other areas, but I don't know if that's gonna end up being the case.
Right.
So I don't know, do you think there will be more power-ups in the game, or is this all we're gonna get, like these 3 new ideas?
I think there will be more. I think that I'm really hopeful that they are hiding quite a lot. They know that the elephant is the only end that everyone needs to play this game and buy it. Like, this game is going to sell gangbusters no matter what. And I think for the harder core Mario fans, they definitely there should be power-ups we're not aware of. Or maybe it'll just be certain wonder effects in the last few levels that are particularly mind-blowing. That would be my hope. I'm confident there's a lot more behind the curtain.
Yeah, they've already shown some pretty wild stuff. Like, one of the wonder effects they showed was basically like, it's one of those ideas where, it's like, oh, you could make a whole indie game out of this, and someone did, because one of the ideas is basically 2D and Top D, that puzzle game that I played, where Mario's walking like a top-down perspective on the side wall of a level, which it's literally another whole game was made around that concept. So I think more stuff like that is wild and varied definitely gets my interest, and I hope continues for the kind of duration of the entire game, so that we can get some fun surprises constantly. And there's fun like riffs on things. There's a weird melon piranha plant, and other new enemies. Like, I like the giant mouth enemies, the kind of weird moly guys, and like there's some cool stuff going on here. They're getting wacky with it, and I appreciate when Nintendo doesn't toe the company line with Mario enemies, and they're like, we're just going to do a weird new guy who no one's ever heard of before, and now will become everybody's favorite thing. I think that there's a lot of possibility for this game, and I'm excited still for it. So looking forward to seeing what comes of Mario Wonder. But one thing, Bally, that we will not be experiencing in Mario Wonder is Charles Martinet as the voice of Mario, because this happened a couple of months ago, but there was some sleuths on Twitter when the first Wonder trailer came out, who were like, don't think that's Mario's voice, and they said the same thing for like the new WarioWare game as well, and I was like, oh, you people are just weird, you're just like finding something to complain about.
I feel like it was said by enough people who know Mario to the point where the new common knowledge was this wasn't Charles Martinet.
I don't know, because
was there a leak before the Nintendo statement?
No, there wasn't. I think it was people just using their ears to be like, I don't think that sounds like him. And I'm like, well, yeah, he's old. He sounds different now. They've probably been using the same lines for years. So it's probably just re-recorded, or they've probably recorded new ones, and now he sounds slightly different. It turns out I was wrong, because it's not Charles Martinet. He is no longer the voice of Mario. And this was a weird rollout where Nintendo puts up a thing on Twitter that's like your classic like cyberpunk apology kind of thing, where they screenshotted a thing and
it's words in the screenshot. It can't be good.
Absolutely. And you read it, you're like, well, he's now the Mario ambassador, but he's not Mario anymore, or Waluigi, or Wario, or Luigi, or any of the family of the Mario crew. And that was all we had for a little bit. And then today there was a video that came out. It's just a weird video in the framing of it, where like Charles Martinet is talking to the camera, thanking everybody, and then Miyamoto talks to the camera, but he's talking to Charles Martinet and not the audience. And it's just a very bizarre...
Because they're probably in different continents.
Of course,
yes. But we didn't learn anything new. There's no new news in the video than there was in the statement. There's some nice little embellishments from Miyamoto joking about when he and Martinet were hanging out in Kyoto, and he was about to bang his head on the ceiling coming into a Kyoto restaurant. Yeah. Really needed that bit of info. But nice to know that Charles Martinet is going to bang his head in a Kyoto restaurant, but we still have no idea why this is happening.
Right.
And the only details we have of Mario Ambassador is that he's going to tour around the country and sign autographs and say hello to people. So...
Which is basically what he's done for the last 20 years anyway.
It's so confusing. Right, what's the MBZ hot take? What's happening?
I don't know. I think like there's definitely the Mario movie has something to do with it, right? Like there's a thread of this that is like Mario needs a new identity. Nintendo just don't want to be over reliant on like one person for one thing, right? I think like they look at this and they look at the future of Mario as a brand, as an identity, and they're like, we can't just tie this to this single dude, right? Because what if he...
What's the downside of that? Of tying it to the one dude?
I don't know. I don't think there is, but I think Nintendo thinks there is, you know? Like, I feel like Nintendo, they want the capability to... Like, Mario is everything to everybody, right? He's a universal, understandable brand identity, and kind of like how James Bond always changes, but James Bond is such an icon of his own right. Mario, I think they see Mario in that way, where they're like, you can be the Mario, right? Like anyone can take up the cape.
Well, if you compare it to like animated characters, so this is my theory. Well, not my theory. This was Ben Hansen's theory on MinMax. I should say. Yeah. Total credit to him because his theory was, Nintendo just feel uncomfortable with someone owning Mario that's not them. And it's not to say Charles Martinet owns Mario legally, but he does own Mario in the sense that like Mario up until now is only been his voice. And if you take other animated characters that are famous, whether it's Mickey Mouse or Sonic or Pikachu, or they have all had multiple voice actors by this point, to the point where no one identifies Mickey Mouse as, yes, Mickey Mouse.
That guy,
the voice of Disney, which he was originally, right?
Yes.
No one now makes that association. Mickey Mouse is just numerous voice actors throughout. Well, I think Disney have just celebrated their 100 years this year, to be honest.
Oh, God. Wow.
So Mickey has had loads of voice actors, and I think Nintendo... like it's a control thing, like we don't like this guy, but that's what's weird, because I can understand Hansen's point of view where he's like, they don't like this guy who essentially owns Mario touring around saying he's Mario, but isn't that what the ambassador role is? And then equally the ambassador role goes against the theory that this guy is old and is retiring, because if he's old and retiring, why is he working so formally for Nintendo in this ambassador role? Or maybe it's not that formal, who knows? But like, it's just so weird, and I don't get it.
Yeah, people have been bringing up this interview that he did with IGN a few years ago that's like, I will play Mario until I drop dead. You know, like he seems like someone who loves doing it and loves the role and loves the fan interaction.
I don't think
his
voice had changed to the point where he couldn't do it anymore either. Like,
certainly not.
Maybe he found it a lot more tiring than he used to. I'm just guessing.
But like, let's be honest. Like, Mario is not Nathan Drake, right? You're not spending 20 hours in a mocap suit in a booth. Like, Charles has to say, maybe, I don't know, he maybe does a day's work for a whole Mario game, because ultimately that's all that Mario says in the game. It's very limited. It's extremely limited. So, like, it's not a big job every time a game comes out for him, and sometimes a game comes out like a Mario Party and they just reuse old lines, so there's not actually any reason for him to be in the booth. So I don't know, like, it feels like most of his job is just going around, so I don't know if it actually changes that much for him, aside from not having his name on the box anymore or the credits saying he is Mario. Very curious, like, who Mario is or what they're doing with that.
I mean, I think they will try and make it as nameless and faceless as possible, because
just not draw attention to it, right? Because part of it is the celebrity that has been associated around him because of this.
I would put Ben Hansen's theory with your theory, and what I mean by that is you're saying like the movie has done something, and Ben Hansen at MinMax was saying Nintendo don't like him being associated with the profile of Mario. The Mario movie has elevated Mario's profile in media to the heights of Elsa from Frozen levels of like higher than that almost. Like, Nintendo will hate the idea of someone so high profile being associated with Charles Martinet. They don't want that person tied so, you know, at such a high level tied to him. Even though obviously his voice is in the Mario film, he's not obviously playing Mario, he's playing Mario's
dad. He plays Mario's dad,
which is great, and I love that. But I still think there's some Nintendo are trying to have their cake and eat it a bit here, where they want to string him along to make sure he's not going to say something that he shouldn't. But at the same time, let's try and make him a bit less faceless as the face of Mario. I don't know.
Yeah, I think people went to him for comment as well before this video came out, and he's like, I don't even know what it means to be an ambassador, but I guess I'm doing it now. Which I think lends credence to, like, this wasn't, I don't know, he probably didn't get a lot of heads up about what was going on, this decision was made for him, essentially. Totally. I think it's pretty clear he didn't step back of his own volition. So I don't know. It's a bit of a shame. I think it's everything I've heard about Charles Martinet from everybody on the internet, it sounds like he is the nicest person in the world. Like, just very open and willing to, show off for the fans with his voices and everything, and just interact and it just loves what he does. So yeah, it's a bit of a shame for him, but
he's one of the very few faces of Nintendo, even though Nintendo's arguably becoming a lot more faceless than it's been in the last 15 years.
And maybe that's part of it as well, right? Like that whole identity shift away from personalities and more around the brand, which I think honestly is a mistake that Sony and Nintendo are both making, because I found them far more interesting as entities when there were people front and center. Shuhei Yoshida and Adam Boyes, no whiff of those. Obviously Adam Boyes left Sony, but folks like that who had an identity around them with PlayStation, they just don't do that anymore. Now you've got fucking Jim Ryan, who nobody likes, and just says the worst things.
Jim Ryan has some of the worst on-camera energy I've ever seen from a video game exec. He's just so, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for?
He just sucks all the energy out of the room.
He is just, awful.
So it's not great, but anyway, we'll see, and we'll find out what happens with that in the near future, I'm sure, because we're gonna have to have a new Waluigi voice, kind of a new Wario voice. So I wonder if there'll be. That's the other thing, right? He had such control over all of these identities at once.
Yeah.
Makes sense probably now for Nintendo to split them up and be like, this person's Waluigi, this person's Wario, this person's Mario. And I think that might be part of it also.
Do we know if Martinet's in WarioWare? I'm guessing he's not for the
Well, yeah, that's what people were saying. The new WarioWare doesn't sound like him either, so I wonder if they've got someone else for that.
Yeah. I think he played voices other than Wario in those games as well. So.
Oh, maybe he did, I don't know, like Orbulon or something.
Maybe,
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Some of those weird characters.
Sad, weird.
Yeah.
Will we ever find out the truth?
Maybe. Just waiting for that Jason Schreier deep dive at one point. We'll
the journalists will be digging right now because it is weird. And Nintendo will be annoyed that it's come out this weird because
we'll
journalists are digging.
Our last news story for the day, Bally. Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. No DLC apparently. It's not happening, says Anuma. So yeah, I think this is a little surprising in the sense that Nintendo have sold more copies than God of Tears of the Kingdom, and you would imagine, given Breath of the Wild had DLC, they would do something. Now, something slightly different here is that when Breath of the Wild was announced, they already had DLC in the plans, right? There was part of their roadmap. Like, before the game even came out, they were like, buy the DLC, get the stupid Switch shirt in the game, and break all your immersion. So they were already on that train, but they didn't have any of that when Tears of the Kingdom was leading up, and I think it probably makes a bit more sense now that they weren't ever planning on doing it, which I think makes sense in how fucking huge and dense this game is already. Like, I don't know that anyone is asking for or needs, there will be people asking for it, but I don't think anyone needs DLC for this game. It is just so rich with things and stuff that that it probably didn't make sense for them to do it, and they almost kind of burned all their ideas. I liked the idea personally of filling out the sky a bit more, because that felt like one of the parts of the games that wasn't fully fleshed out, and you could do a lot more with just adding sky islands, because they're very easy to just appear in the sky and just do stuff with. But I don't know, how do you feel about this, Bally? Obviously you're still not finished with Zelda, so probably more DLC is not what you're looking for. But
50 hours in and have maybe explored less than a third of the map fairly thoroughly, and I'm looking forward to the rest of this year. I'm getting back to Zelda. I have no appetite for DLC. I doubt that when I'm done with this game I'll have an appetite for any DLC. So personally, I don't mind. I think it's surprising in the sense that is so much easy cash money just left sitting on the counter that they've just decided not to have. At the same time, we got to remember, Animal Crossing is one of the best. Is it top or top 2 selling games on Switch
it's
now?
Number 2 behind Mario Kart.
Yeah. But I was trying to merge Mario Kart and Animal Crossing. Manimal
Kart.
But Animal Crossing, correct me if I'm wrong, it had like one decently sized batch of DLC, and that was kind of it.
I mean, Animal Crossing was like, here's the first year of stuff, but the first year of stuff was like, here's the Christmas event, which like would usually just be in an Animal Crossing game.
My point is, it was light as hell, and it could have been longer. They could have charged more. They could have included more. So my point is, they left a lot of cash money sitting on the counter for that decision as well. So in that sense, it's not surprising that Nintendo's just got this very strange relationship with DLC and how they roll it out. So it's not that surprising. And stepping back, I think it's good news in the sense that one of your criticisms, and probably one of my criticisms, I've not fully decided yet, is that we're back in the same world. In Tears of the Kingdom, we're back in the same world with Breath of the Wild. You're praying that the next game, even though it's going to be open world Zelda, isn't using the same landmass. And the fact that they've turned down the idea of DLC, and the likelihood would have been that they might have used this landmass again for something, whether it's more shrines appearing or a dungeon appearing or who knows, it implies they're pretty done with this world, in my view, and that the next open world Zelda, whenever and however that comes to exist, will definitely be a different landmass, and it's not going to be this trilogy of the same landmass. And I think not having DLC is maybe another argument that that's the case.
Yeah, they've wrung a lot of juice out of it, and I think that, you know, I think part of this interview as well was saying like the next one's going to be totally different, which I think is good news, and I think it's kind of what I expected. But yeah, I do want that, and I would rather, frankly, I would rather them just get started on making another Zelda, because it's going to take them another 6 years, as opposed to spending any resources continuing to build on this one. What do you think of like the idea that them not doing DLC says anything about the successor system that's to come?
Yeah, I guess the release date of this DLC would likely be end of this year or start of next year, and then you're definitely potentially, especially if it's next year, stepping on the toes of marketing for that next system. And it feels like we're not getting any big game announcements coming out that we don't already know about coming before the successor system, and arguably a Tears of the Kingdom DLC is a big announcement. So I think you're right. I think that does suggest, yep, getting Switch 2 summer, October 2024. We're going to start hyping it up end of this year, start of next year. Look out for it.
I mean, this wasn't on our agenda, but there have been leaks and rumors of Nintendo showing the sequel to Switch at Gamescom.
Right. Kind of one of those things that felt like a wild rumor, and now Eurogamer are like, yeah, it happened.
And VGC as well, who are very trusted and have a lot of sources. Like I don't know. I think that there's a lot of truth probably behind this stuff. Like, Nintendo has to show it to external partners at some point, and that's a point when it's going to start getting out there. And I wonder if them showing it, because like they know that as soon as they start doing this, leaks are going to happen, because as soon as it's outside of the purview of the company, people are not going to be as kind of tight-lipped as they usually are. So I don't know. Does this to you suggest that they might do an actual reveal themselves sometime soon, like this year potentially?
Potentially, but I think if they do it this year, it'll likely be a release date for the new system, like late spring, early summer. Like, you might get that May slot again, isn't that when Switch 1 came out? So.
No, it was March actually.
Oh, it was March. So I keep thinking it's May, and you've corrected me. It's March numerous times. Yeah, maybe they could do the whole October and then January and then release on March. They could do, but that doesn't give much time to release Peach, you know? Like,
no, that's
game's
true.
got to come out. So I would side more with summer or autumn, but I don't think we see anything official from Nintendo this year.
Yeah, it just makes me wonder, because they really are, if they're showing it at Gamescom to people, they're really leaving themselves with an open goal for this thing to be leaked to hell before they have any chance of announcing it properly.
And you know, they now have a hell of a lot more third-party relationships than they did with the Wii U.
Oh, totally, and
this is their first time launching a system with that much spotlight on them, in the sense that they have all these partnerships, all these relationships, and they're having to launch a new system in that environment where the media are a lot more, you know, when's Switch 2, what's it going to be? And obviously there was that hype for Switch 1. Nintendo never lost their hype. They're still an incredibly important company at the end of the Wii U life cycle, but that spotlight is still way bigger right now, and it must be difficult because they've got to get those development kits out. They do want the games to come to the system probably from day one, so you can't just release the thing and then give the dev kits. So yeah, I bet it's a really fine balance of how do you talk about a thing without talking about a thing, and make sure that when the thing you're not talking about is ready to come out without anyone knowing about it. It's hard.
Yeah, but the things people are saying about it are exciting, but also like in a way that it's always like this with Nintendo hardware, where people are like, it's gonna be 4K, it's gonna have the graphics this time, they're finally gonna do GameCube 2, and like I'm always very skeptical of that, because that just isn't Nintendo, and it never has been. But they are coming off a very successful system, and they do want to replicate what they did with that system, and they know that a lot of these third-party partners don't want to make stuff on Switch because it's too underpowered, so they need to have solutions for this stuff.
Yes.
And so, like, the idea that they're using NVIDIA's DLSS technology in order to, you know, have a less powerful piece of hardware, but can make games still look pretty and good and run well. Like, apparently the Unreal 5 tech demo, the Matrix one, is running on this new piece of hardware, alongside Final Fantasy VII Remake, right? Like, that's the sort of stuff that is super exciting, because it means that, hey, you don't need to own another console ever again, because you can play all this stuff at high fidelity on a handheld that you can take anywhere with you and keep that as your one kind of main system, which I think for Nintendo and for a lot of these console manufacturers is the dream, is like be the only dominant thing in the market. So yeah, I don't know. It also, like, leadership changes, you know, this is the first transition where it's like, okay, we've had this new president for a few years now, and we're going into a new term, and like Furukawa likely is going to be president for a very long time. So I think that his background is very different from Iwata, and his perspective, his ideas. Like, we don't know much about him. He's very much reclusive. He doesn't talk to the press that much. He's a good English speaker, we know, because he worked in Germany and was part of Nintendo of Europe for a long time. But he comes from a business background, and I think that might signal, like, hey, he's kind of making these decisions from that kind of place, as opposed to a more kind of Nintendo weird creative place, which, don't get me wrong, I'm sure there'll be weird Nintendo creative decisions with this hardware. We're already hearing about there's going to be a camera in it, potentially, so, you know, off to the races with that stuff. But I think fundamentally it is a follow-up to a successful system, building on those ideas and just making it a bit more, beefy.
And we've always talked that Nintendo leave an open door for the quirky, weird Wii Sportsification of the gaming industry, and that was evident in the January Tokyo, was it Tokyo? The
it was in Japan, yeah.
Right,
yeah.
The Japanese showing off of the Switch back in January 2017. So, because they had ARMS, they had 1-2 Switch, it was like, oh my god.
Yeah, and even throughout the life cycle of the Switch, you had Labo and you had Ring Fit Adventure, like stuff like that was successful and did well for them.
Exactly.
Off-the-wall ideas.
That stuff is always going to be there. But that January presentation is also a good example. Yeah, it's still closed with like Breath of the Wild with the most incredible trailer ever. And I think that that's probably going to be the ethos they continue with, especially if it's got this rumored camera. That's just going to be all kinds of fun. But,
and I guess talking of Breath of the Wild, the rumor was also that they're showing off a beefed up version of Breath of the Wild running at a higher frame rate, running at a higher resolution on this thing. Which was always the dream, right? It's like, hey, what about 60 FPS Breath of the Wild? That'd be really nice.
That's where it just feels so un-Nintendo. Like, could you imagine?
Absolutely, yes, yeah. That's where I call bullshit, because I'm like, Nintendo don't do this. That's not their MO.
Could you imagine a $70, £70 pack that includes Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild running at 60 FPS, 4K on the Switch 2? Comes out in like I don't know where we're at now. It comes out in like 2025 or something. You know, like that would be the most un-Nintendo thing ever. But especially since we still don't have like Wind Waker HD.
No, yeah, Switch. Where the hell are those fucking games that apparently have been made for years? So who knows? It's exciting times. Like, I remember this cycle in the build up to the Switch, and we were very thirsty for it. And I'm feeling, my mouth's feeling dry right now. I'm there. I'm excited for this hype build up. It's going to be quite a few months to come. Yeah, I think so. The NX was such a weird situation because Nintendo told us the code name in like 2015 or something stupid.
I know,
right?
just to stop shareholders leaving them high and dry, I guess. But,
absolutely, like it was a whole 2 years of speculation, and
we're not going to get that this time. I'm so glad the speculation is shorter.
Yes,
hopefully shorter. Who knows? But sounds like it's going to be shorter.
Yeah. So. Looking forward to it and all the stuff that will be revealed. But that is going to close us out for today's show. Thank you, everybody, for listening and for continuing to tune in to this here program on a 2-weekly basis. We are going to get on out of here and plug some stuff as we go. So you can find us on various places across the internet. You can find me on Twitter at LordNBZ. Bally, where can they find you?
I'm on Twitter at Ballyman91. That's BALLYMAN91. I shared a tweet. It was a Guardian review of Sea of Stars, and the reviewer said, this might be the best pixel art since Eastward. And I was just like, this game is calling me. Like, I need to play this game.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Again, like laser targeted directly at you.
This person's referencing Eastward in this Guardian review. What the hell? This is insane. But that was fun.
Very, very cool. I think it's very hard to touch the pixel art of Eastward. Sea of Stars gets close. I don't think it's up to par, but it's very, very good. It's very, very good. So, awesome.
We'll talk about that next time.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been playing that as well, so I'll definitely deep dive into that next time on the podcast. But in the meantime, you can also follow the podcast on Twitter at TNL Podcast for all the updates. Link to our Discord, links to our YouTube channel, where you can find the show in those places as well. You can help us out if you would like. You can go to patreon.com/ThisNintendoLife, where you can get some bonus episodes, as well as, if you want to go to the $5 tier, you get random stuff every now and again, including the audio logs that I do when I go to events and things. So this Gamescom one will be coming, so feel free to check it out. But Bally, we'd like to thank some folks from Patreon.
Yes, thank you to our $10 tier plus patrons. They are Zach S, Thomas, Matthew, Albert, Wicked Gamer UK, Alan, and Turtle. Thank you for your $10 tier plus support. But thank you to all of our other patrons. We really, really, really appreciate all the support you give the show. And as MBZ said, that $5 tier is where he's sticking his audio logs, and you're probably going to be going to another few gaming things in the future. So that's probably a useful tier to be on.
Yeah, maybe a PAX at some point.
Yeah, PAX.
If I'm lucky, the Game Awards. No, probably will never happen.
We're talking.
Yeah, that'd be great. It'll probably never happen. But anyway, some fun stuff to come. So. Cool. And then also you can find the show in various places. We're on Spotify, we're on Stitcher. You can go and subscribe to us on any podcasting app of your choice. Review us on Apple Podcasts.
I think I heard Stitcher wasn't a thing anymore. Was it something?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is it gone?
God, someone was saying it on the podcast I was listening
to.
No.
Well, I'm just going to keep saying it until someone says otherwise.
Exactly.
So you can find us. We're everywhere. Just look for This Nintendo Life, and you can download us, and we're in your inbox. Notify you of new episodes.
We've had the right good boost in the last few months in Spotify reviews, so
nice,
thank you everyone for those.
Appreciate it.
If you want to give us a review on Spotify, that would usually be appreciated. I think it's just like a 5-star rating, so
it's much easier to do. So go ahead and do that. That really, really does help. And that'd be great. And that, I think, is going to do us. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We will be back in a couple of weeks' time. Where fingers crossed, the Nintendo Direct will have already happened, and we can talk about it, and that'll be good. And then we're in the race to the end of the year with big old Mario Wonder coming around. So looking forward to checking that thing out, finally. And we'll see what we think. But that's going to do us. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time. Until then, see ya. The musical interlude used on today's show was Blizzard Man Stage from Mega Man 6, copyright Capcom 1993.